Hey guys, and welcome to Ozzie Reviews, and welcome to this month's Q&A. This is the chance for you guys who support me on Patreon to fire a few questions at me and have them answered in this monthly video. Now, for those of you who are at home who are going, what is the go with this Patreon? I'm hearing it, I don't understand it. Look, simply guys, it's a donation feature. It's a similar platform to like Facebook, where I can actually post things, exclusively for Patreon viewers. And it's an opportunity for you guys to say, hey, look, thank you for what you're doing. And it's as little as $1 a month, just one single dollar per month. So I actively, encourage you guys to become involved with it, because it helps keep my costs down and it increases the frequency of the actual video reviews that I'm doing here on YouTube. So anyhow, check it out if you're interested. Now let's get into this month's questions. So Aaron Hewitt asks, I know you're not a fan of the 17 HMR rifle, however, have you ever reviewed one? Or when are you going to review one? He's saying that ever since he got his 17, he's a huge fan. Mate, I have. I've reviewed the Mercedes-Benz of 17 HMRs, the Anschutz 1727F. Now, it's been up for a couple of years, so it's got just over 40,000 views or something like that on it. So it's quite a popular review. Absolute Mercedes-Benz of rifles, that, and it just enhances what is, a good cartridge. Me personally, I'm just not a fan of the 17 cartridges. A couple of reasons, frustrates me a bit, with the flimsy cleaning rods. It just annoys me. And I also like to have rounds with just a wider range of actual bullet weight. That's just only my personal preference, but I do know the 17 HMR is a good cartridge for its purpose. Now, John the Economidas asks about barrel lengths, and he says here, what are my thoughts on barrel lengths when it comes to long range shooting? Because he's looking at a Tikka CTR, and both 20-inch and 24-inch barrels are on offer. So he wants to know, is there a difference when shooting out to 1,000 metres with a 6.5 Creedmoor with those two different barrel lengths? He does add here that he does understand that there's a loss of muzzle velocity on shorter barrels, and would it make a huge difference down range? Look, the short answer, John, with a 6.5 Creedmoor, no. And why I say that is because, the 140 grain projectile, for example, out of a 24-inch barrel, in 6.5 Creedmoor is leaving the muzzle at about 2,700 feet per second. When it's out of 1,000 yards, and I know I talk in yards when it goes to shooting, so you'll just have to work that out in meters, but when it's out of 1,000 yards, it's still doing over 1,500 feet per second. Okay, so you're not going to see any diminish in accuracy or its basic aerodynamics of that projectile. And why I say that is because it hasn't entered into that transonic zone, and the transonic zone is when basically a projectile goes from supersonic back to subsonic. Okay, that's where you lose your aerodynamics, and there's problems there with obviously accuracy. Okay, now as I say, 6.5, not a big deal. Once you start chopping off the inches on barrels, usually per inch I've seen about between sort of 25 and 33 feet per second loss in velocity. So if you take 4 inches off it, okay, say hypothetically it's going to be about 100 feet per second loss over the 24-inch barrel. So even then, out at 1,000 yards, that 6.5 Creedmoor using 140 grain pill will still be moving at around about 1,400 feet per second. So it's well above the speed of sound, which is roughly about that 1,100 feet per second. Okay, so it's not gone into that transonic zone, so you're still going to have really good accuracy from the caliber. The only difference is obviously your bullet drop is going to be a little bit more because it's moving that tad slower. So my advice would be, go for the longer barrel. If that's your purpose, if you just want to shoot long range, I would definitely be going for a longer barrel, because even if it's 100, 150 feet per second, it's just going to give you that little bit more reach and just that little bit flatter shooting. So I hope that answers your question. Now, Daniel Torrens asked me about my experience with import permits, B709s, which are the name for an import permit issued by your state police department for category A, B and H firearms and or parts. He wants to know if I've had experience and what are the turnaround times for the permit. and the procedure in handing the permit to customs. So first of all, yes, I have. I've imported many times before, mate. Pretty straightforward. All you got to do is, here in Queensland anyway, jump on Weapons Licensing homepage and you can fill out an online application. It's actually free. What happens is usually anywhere between sort of like 7 days to 30 days I've found. It's just varied. You'll actually get that permit approved and then it comes out in the mail to you, okay? You need to hang on to that because you need to submit the original, not a photocopy or an email or anything like that. You need to take the original to customs. So what happens is once the goods come into the country, depending on what you order, will depend on whether you need a permit or not. So you've got to look that up. So for example, let's take something that needs a permit like a firearm magazine. So say for example you import 10 firearm magazines from the States because you want to save yourself a bit of money. It comes in, customs then sees it, they will then send you out a letter, and that can take a couple of weeks to say, hey, they've got it, they've seized it, and you need to produce the correct import permit to have the goods released. So then you have to drive over to customs, which are located near DFO, if anyone knows where that is, near Brisbane Airport. And you go in, you show your import permit, you then have to show a copy of your shooter's license, and then take that out the back. They'll contact Weapons Licensing, make sure everything's above board and the permit is valid. Then they come back with the goods, you then sign a release and then you take the goods. So look, pretty straightforward, but my advice with it is one, find out what needs an import permit and what doesn't. Because for example, if it's something like a small part, like just a sear, you know, you might get a custom polished up sear, well that's not going to require a permit. But magazines or complete trigger mechanism, stuff like that, does. So you need to just have a look at that. You can find that information on the customs website. So just make sure that you know, before going through the process, that you actually need an import permit for whatever the parts are that you want to import. And secondly, make sure you stay under that $1,000 Australian dollar limit, because once you go over that, you get hit with import tax. So that's the last thing you want. So keep it under that level. And look, it's pretty straightforward to do. Now Ian Craig asked the next question about load data and running a 308 subsonic round. Now he says here he's interested in doing it and he understands you can get the 300 blackout, but what if you can get similar results from your trusty 308? So first of all, Ian, yes, you can actually buy subsonic ammo here. Lapua make a 200 grain full metal jacket boat tail load that is subsonic, okay, and that's imported by Nile, so you should be able to get that at pretty much any gun shop if you order it. Now there's another ammunition I haven't seen here in Australia called Beck ammunition, B-E-C-K. I've seen it over in the States and they actually make a whole wide range of subsonic loads for different centerfires. So if you wanted to try that, I mean, you know, you could approach one of the gun shops here who import directly themselves, and perhaps they could get you some. But for the actual load data, now I remember having a look at loaddata.com, and they've actually got loads there for Trail Boss, okay, and I think it was about 10 grains of powder for a 165 grain pill out of the 308, and it was definitely subsonic. So have a look at loaddata.com, you'll probably find the answers there. Now the next question here is from Bianca Arter, and she says that she's looking at getting a Ruger American rimfire in 22 Win Mag. Now that's going to be her first rifle, and she says she's been looking around and discovered it comes in a compact model as well. She's comfortable with the standard size, but the compact may suit her a bit better. And she asked, do I think that the shorter barrel will have a negative impact on accuracy and velocity? First of all, good choice there, a great first rifle. Honestly, the Ruger American is just a fantastic first rifle for people, so good choice there. Now, I went for the standard myself. The only reason is because I'm 6'5", so you know, I didn't want something that was too compact. I wanted something that was going to fit my length of pull. Now, accuracy wise, you're really not going to find much of a difference, okay? Once you find that ammo that rifle loves, it will shoot it accurately. I remember seeing an article in one of the NRA magazines a couple of years ago when the Ruger American rimfires first came out, and they were comparing the shorter compact model with the standard. and there was only a slight difference in accuracy. Like I'm talking like around about 0.1 of an inch, so there wasn't much difference at all. So it depends on what your use is going to be. I mean, if you're going to be out, on private property and you're just walking around the rifle, having a bit of plinking fun and stuff, the compact version is really good because it's going to be lighter. It's about 1/4 of a kilo lighter over the standard model, so that's something for you to keep an eye out for. If you're going to be just at a range and you're going to be shooting and you want to get a little bit extra edge on accuracy, look, go for the standard version. But either way, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. I mean, the sweet spot for rimfires a lot of the time, especially 22s in general, is about a 16-inch barrel. Once you go over that, there's really not much difference in the velocity. So honestly, go for the one you want. You really can't go wrong with either of those models. So the next question I've got here is from Edward Gayton, and he asks about what's the difference between higher and lower twist rates in rifles, and what would be the preferred use of a higher lower twist rate. Okay, Edward, I really like to compare this with American football, and why I say that is if you've ever watched it, you see the quarterback grab that American football and throw it through the air, okay? Now sometimes you see a really nice aerodynamic spin on that football as it just seems to glide through the air. Then other times you'll see it wobbly and it's not as aerodynamic. Well, it's identical with actual projectiles, okay? So the twist rate is like when you're throwing an American football. When you throw an American football, you're not throwing it just like a basketball. You're actually throwing it and spinning your hand as you release it so that it gets that perfect spin and goes through the air. So the twist rate determines the spin there with the projectile, okay, when shooting. So let's take something really common like a 223 for example. 223s generally have a 1 in 12 inch twist because that is pretty much the standard twist rate for 223. So that'll stabilize all your common 55 grain ammo and up to around about the 64 grain bullet weight. Once you go over that, and you'll see this on like Sierra Bullets website, you get into the heavier stuff and they'll have a recommendation for like a 1 in 8 inch twist or a 1 in 7 inch twist, okay? I like a 1 in 9 inch twist because that seems to be the sweet spot that will stabilize all the lighter ammunition without any problem whatsoever, but will stabilize a lot of the heavier ammunition as well. So it depends on what your need is to which way you would go. So for example, if it is a 223 and you were just into having a bit of plinking fun and you just want to go out and do a little bit of hunting or shooting on private property and you're only using 62 or 64 grain ammo and maybe 55 grain ammo, look, a 1 in 12 inch twist would suit you perfectly. However, if you want to have the best of both worlds, I'd recommend going for something with a 1 in 9 inch twist so you can stabilize right up to that 75 grain ammo, which obviously starts to take you into the world of target shooting with the 223, which can be a challenge within itself. So I hope that explains it all. Just depends on what your use is, but that's how the twist rate works with the heavier and lighter projectile rates. Now Darren Versace says here, first of all, he loved the behind the scenes video that I did. So guys, if you don't know, if you're on Patreon, you would. I did a behind the scenes video with a bit more of the life of Ozzie Reviews on the farm and showing you some of the cattle. So that's another reason, if you do want to take advantage of Patreon, you do get to see a little bit more behind the scenes. So thank you, Darren, for that. I'm glad you enjoyed the video. I'll do a few more. And into your question here, you say, what do you reload your own ammo? And also, you've just bought a Tikka T3 TAC A1. Good choice there, mate, that's for sure. And you're looking at reloading your own rounds, and do I have any recommendations on presses? Okay, so to answer your first part of the question, no, I don't reload. I used to, so I am familiar with reloading, but my primary calibers, obviously, I love my rimfires, which you can't really reload. However, the centerfires, I stick to 223 and 308, so I find that there's really good ammo deals if you buy in bulk, and especially now those calibers are being made by OSA here in Australia. Like, I sort of find it not even worth reloading. The accuracy I get from the ammunition in general and you know, the extra time it would take me to reload, it's really not worth it to me, just personally. However, your circumstance here might be a bit different, because having a Tikka T3 TAC A1, I mean, you know, you're going to be doing long range shooting, and that's where you really get into the world of fine tuning those reloads. So look, if you want to get yourself a single press, you can do it, and it'll take you a reasonable amount of time to just punch out one round, but it'll be very, very precise, because you'll be taking your time with each step of the reloading process. But honestly, I'd be looking at something like you know, the Dillon range of presses. Dillon have a really good name as quite a high-end brand, and I think you'd probably like that, especially when you're talking about long-range shooting with that particular rifle setup that you've got. So like the Dillon 650, for example, is a progressive press. So what I mean by that is it's got different stages. Okay, so you just pull the lever and it just moves on to the next stage. So you can produce a lot more ammunition a lot quicker than what you can with just a single press. Okay, so, or single stage press, I should say. So it depends on what you want to do, but honestly, have a look at the Dillon range. If you're looking at just single stage presses, look, RCBS, Hornady, there's a heap of them out there, and what it comes down to is just how meticulous you want to become to which press you get. But I like a press that's going to pump out a fair bit of ammunition, and so I can have a lot of fun, you know, when I take it to a range or just shooting in general on the farm. So I hope that answers your question. Now, Mitchell Gill asked a very interesting question here about is it safe to use 5.56 NATO ammunition, in particular the Hornady TAP 62 grain soft points in a 223 rifle. Now, he's saying that he's run about 40 rounds of 5.56 through his Weatherby Vanguard, and he wasn't sure, you know, whether it's safe to do it or not. Look, the short answer there, Mitch, is no. And why I say that is because, you know, you may have heard from, you know, reading online, no doubt you've done a little bit of background on it. You'll hear people talk about higher chamber pressure with the 5.56 NATO. Now, there's a little bit more to it, but in a nutshell, that is the reason. So when you actually have a look at the throat, and when I'm talking about the throat, I'm talking about the area in front of the chamber inside the barrel before you hit the rifling. Okay. Now, the throat there on a 5.56 chambered rifle is a lot longer than a 223, almost twice the length, to be honest. So where that becomes dangerous is if you're actually putting 5.56 ammo into a 223 chambered rifle. There's a chance that that projectile, because of the shorter throat, can be resting on rifling before it's fired. Okay. Now, if it's doing that, that increases the actual pressure significantly. Okay, so that's where it comes from. I'm not talking about 5.56 has increased pressure. So what's the risk of that? If you're increasing the pressure, okay, and you're going over what's called the SAMI specs, okay, which is pretty much the benchmark for ammunition and how much powder and pressure is put into those factory loads. Now, if you're going above that, okay, that's at your own peril, that's at your own risk. What can happen, okay, is you can get a ruptured cartridge, which you know, obviously isn't going to be very nice. Now, there are safeguards in place in a lot of rifles. You've got those a gas port usually drilled in the side of a receiver, so if you get a ruptured primer or case or something, it can vent those gases out away from your face, you know. So look, there are safeguards put in place, but the short answer is no. Personally, I would not do it, and that's why, because there is increased pressure and you're putting yourself at risk. So mate, it's at your own risk, but I wouldn't do it personally, that's all I'm saying. Okay, so the last question I've got here is from James Irvine, and he says, what's your favourite bullet weight for 308 4 pigs? And he also asks a funny question about what politician, in your opinion, is the biggest oxygen thief? So, okay, the first part here is probably, I'd say 135 grain from OSA. I really like that ammo. That bullet weight is just a nice sweet spot. I know for 308 it's more on the lighter side, just like the 130 grain Federals, but they just do the job. You know, any of those bullet weights, 130, 135, If I really was going for heavier pigs and I was doing a little bit more long range shots, I'd use the 165 grain Sierra Game Kings. That round is, well, that projectile, or the round if you get it from Outback Ammo or different manufacturers who load it in factory ammo, is just brilliant. So any of those, mate's going to do the job. At the end of the day, it's a 308. 308 is going to take any pig here in Australia, hands down. Now, to answer the last part of the question there, look, honestly, eeny, meeny, miny, mo from the greens, I think. Okay, guys, so that's it for this month's Q&A. Thank you very much for all the questions there. Like I said, if you want to be a part of this, please jump onto Patreon, guys. It's just from $1 a month. You know, if you really enjoy the content that I'm putting out, please show me your support so that I can give you that support back in the quality of the content that I'm doing. Okay, guys, thanks very much for watching, so we'll catch you next time.